Bonjour, je m'appelle Maya, je parle anglais, français et chinois. Et un peu d'espagnol. Hi, my name's Maya. I'm... Oh, well, this is a tough one actually.
Yeah.
So I was raised in Paris,
Mhm.
but I was born in Johannesburg. My mother's Taiwanese, and my dad's complicated. He's Swiss, German. He was born in New Zealand, and all of his brothers and sisters were born in different countries, mainly the US and Canada. So when people ask me where I'm from, there's no short answer, you know? Basically, when I'm in the UK, I feel French. When I'm in France, I feel Asian. And when I'm in Asia, I feel white. And that's basically where I'm from.
That's really interesting. Because I feel like the reason why you feel like when you're here you feel French, and it's because you're not just one thing. And you
Exactly.
sometimes, do you feel like an outsider? Like, let's say if you're in France.
Culturally, a little bit, because I never, for example, when I lived in France, I never really was into. I love the French way of living. I love the French culture, but I wasn't so much into French cinema, French music, and my friends would love it, and I didn't really feel a part of the French culture there. And I guess it's the same no matter where I go. It's not that I feel like I'm an outsider, but there's just that I don't feel like I can consider myself that nationality when I'm people that are from a nationality that I'm linked to. Like when I'm in Taiwan, I really feel like I'm very white, you know? But yet, when I'm anywhere but in Taiwan, I feel incredibly Asian, you know? I feel like what my mother's taught me is very Asian, you know? The Asian education and the Asian, you know, cleanness and politeness, and you must know. I mean, most Asian families have like similar cores of values. But so I wouldn't say an outsider, because I feel like outsider is a very negative word, and luckily and I know that it's not true for everybody that's in a similar situation as me, but luckily I feel like I never feel excluded. I never feel people are always quite welcoming and interested, and which wouldn't be the case if probably, you know, I was this is the harsh truth and it's sad, but if I was an unattractive guy, it's probably because I'm Asian and I have big tits, and that probably makes people more curious rather than, you know, like, she's not really one of us, is she, you know? And when I go to Taiwan, when I do start speaking Asian, I feel anything but an outsider, because people are so excited about the fact that I can speak Chinese, and are so welcoming for that, you know? So I don't think outsider is the right word that I'd use.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what would it mean to you if you were... Okay, no, so what are the languages that you speak?
So I speak, natively I speak French and Chinese, and then I learned a bit of Spanish, but from my mom I speak Chinese, and from my dad the French. But I don't really know where the French came from, really, because my grandfather or my grandmother on my dad's side, they're not French. I think it's just because I lived in France, really, but apparently my parents put me in French school when I was in South Africa, but I don't really know ethnically how I speak French. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, let's say, what would it mean to you if you completely lose, like, French or like Mandarin?
It would be incredibly sad if I couldn't speak Mandarin anymore, which is kind of what's happening. Like you, I'm starting to lose it, just because I don't have anybody to speak it with, and even the people that I do know that speak Mandarin, they wouldn't come like that to speak Mandarin to them, you know, apart from my grandparents that can only speak Mandarin. And it would be really, really sad, because it's so important to me that my children, because I really want kids, and that my children get the Taiwan side of me. It's my most and it's not right to say per se, but it's my most valued culture, I think, that I want to give it to my children, because I think that in a lot of Asian cultures it's really important to be incredibly respectful, and you know, everything that goes alongside with it, punctuality, and you know, in Taiwan people are very warm and welcoming, and I feel like if I lost my Chinese language I wouldn't feel Taiwanese anymore, you know, and it would just be really sad, really. So I hope I can teach my children to speak Chinese, even though I can't really speak well at all.
Classes, tuition classes.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you said, you know, well, no, you're not losing it, but you know, slowly you're starting to forget some words. Is it difficult, like conversing, let's say, like with your grandparents or people from
Definitely,
Taiwan?
definitely. It's actually funny because my grandfather, he spends most of his time, especially during my childhood when I went to Taiwan, you know, watching TV, laying, napping, not really talking to us. And when I grew older, because my Chinese was a little bit better between my primary school, high school period, I actually got to know my grandfather, and I actually got to have conversations with him, and I realized that he wasn't, you know, the boring old man that I thought he was. He had so much to say, and he's such an interesting guy. But now, for the last 2-3 years, I can't really communicate with them. I can speak to them when I'm on the phone. I'll just say, hi, how are you? And then my grandmother, she speaks so much, I'll often just be on the phone and just say yes, but I don't always understand what she says. And it's really a shame, because my grandmother, she's a bit loose, but my grandfather, he's such an interesting man, and he's such a, you know, he moved to South Africa with my mother and my uncle when they were kids, so they could not have the Asian harsh education of going to school until 9 o'clock at night, and I really respect that. I really thought it was very open-minded for somebody that, you know, was born and raised Taiwanese to take an initiative to like offer another kind of education for their children. And he's just a fascinating guy, and I can't really speak to them anymore, and I feel almost like a hypocrite when I'm in Taiwan, smiling to people and you know, talking to them and understanding half of they're saying and kind of smiling and nodding, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Okay, could you just we kind of said this, but well, what are the benefits and what do you love about your mother tongue being, let's say, in the UK?
In the UK, I don't use it in the UK.
No, not at all.
I don't use any Chinese in the UK. I use Chinese to speak to my mother in Paris, which is great, you know, speaking behind my dad's back. And even, you know, one of my favorite things about speaking Chinese, and it's definitely not the best thing about speaking Chinese, but for me it's what brings me the most joy is when I'll be at a Chinese speaking place, like a Chinese restaurant, and I'll speak Chinese, and the look on the people's faces, they are, you know, they're so happy that you speak Chinese, because they think that either you've learned or, you know, because I look pretty white, I don't really look Asian, and even though I'm half, and people are always just so excited to see that I can speak their language, because a lot of people, like for Chinese New Year, I went to Churro, to a Chinese restaurant, and the cook, I told him, oh, it was really good, and he told me he didn't speak English, and then I started speaking to him in Chinese, and he was so excited, and I could straight away see that he doesn't really talk to local people in Churro, just because he doesn't speak English, and you know, just being able to build bridges between people, I think, is the best thing about the fact that I speak Chinese. And for French, it's just a great language to speak, really. It's so nice to be able to speak, first of all, more than one language. It's a huge privilege, and it feels like I'm equipped to not to know more things in terms, but like to understand more feelings, because there are a lot of words in English, for example, that don't exist in France, and vice versa. And it can be frustrating, but at the same time, it's good for me to know that some words exist, you know? Like when I think I told you this once before, but when I'm trying to tell my friends in France, my guy friends, that they're patronizing, I can't, because it doesn't exist, the word, you know? But it's good for me to know that patronizing exists. When I moved to the UK and I heard a friend say to a friend, "Oh, you're so patronizing," I immediately knew, I was like, thank God there's a word for this, you know? It's, you know, you can be nice to somebody while, you know, not being nice. And that's one great thing about being able to speak several languages. And of course, like business-wise, it's great. I mean, I don't know if I'll be using it, but I certainly want to go to culinary school in France one day. And it's great that I can speak French. And I know that a lot of Chinese people go to culinary school in France as well. So that's great as well. And also Chinese is a hugely spoken language, so it's very practical.
That's amazing. I didn't know you want to go to culinary school. Yeah, I know you love cooking. I see your Instagram stories and Instagram. You're just like, oh.
I love cooking. You know, actually, I study music because I love it. I'm passionate about it, and like, I know that I'm a good singer. But truthfully, food is my religion. It's everything. It's, you know, I could spend 3 hours in the kitchen making just a really long meal just for myself. That will take me 5 minutes to eat, but I just love it. Hopefully one day I'll be able to open a jazz club, restaurant or something if I have the money. But maybe I can join both of them together, food and music. But food is a big deal for me, you know. Especially like my mom, she's such an amazing cook. And one day, I was coming home from school at 8 o'clock, and my mom just serves me this creme brulee. And creme brulee, you know, it's a fancy dish that you have to blowtorch and everything. And my mom spent a couple of years like doing loads so she could really get the recipe right. And I was a bit high when I came home from class. And my mom serves me this creme brulee, and I ate it, and I thought to myself, like, I'm the luckiest person in the world, and I hope that one day my children will get to come home and eat so well and think the same thing, you know? It's such an amazing, I don't know, there's just such an amazing like connecting power to food, you know?
So, yeah, so how did you learn your, like you said, Chinese through your mother and then French through school?
Yeah. So my mother always tried to speak Chinese with me at home. She often accidentally spoke English to us, but she tried to speak as much Chinese as she could. Because it's hard for her as well, you know. She's Taiwanese, but she spent a lot of her life in South Africa, and she's not used to speaking Chinese all the time, you know, unless it's with her parents in Taiwan. And English was really just, you know, something I grew up with. You know, I was being born in South Africa and having a really international family. You know, I always communicated with the rest of my family, never in French. And yeah, the strangest one is really French, and it's probably because I've lived there, and you know, just having French friends and all of that. Yeah, and Chinese. I had a Chinese teacher when I was younger. Until I moved to the UK, I had a Chinese teacher, a very close woman that would come to our house every hour for 1 hour, and we'd just speak in Chinese and do these little card games, you know, where there'll be a word in Chinese and I have to guess what it is. Such bullshit, because I haven't remembered anything from it, but it was great. But yeah, I'm really out of practice.